we have seen some of these glaring issues that exist with the Raptors propping up a little bit more prominently as of late. So let's discuss exactly what those issues are, first of all, and then we'll discuss what can be done to rectify this to actually make sure that it doesn't continue to happen going forward for the rest of the season. And it's important to solve these things because the Raptors right now are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. They are making a push to make the playoffs as a top 6 seed, not having to go through the issues of a play-in tournament here. They're looking good. They're the 4th seed right now. We're more than 50 games into the season. The Raptors just won their 30th game in their 51st game of the season. They won 30 games all of last year. Things are going in absolutely the right direction for the Raptors, and they're coming off a win in their previous game. But they didn't play particularly well in that win. And the 2 games before that, they looked really, really bad in the late stage of the game. And where the Raptors' problem has really been lying has been when the game constricts itself into this playoff sort of environment. The game slows down. The Raptors have to operate in the half court more often. That is really more reminiscent of a playoff environment. Where the Raptors have had a lot of their success this season has been playing in transition. You notice in these games lately where the Raptors are succeeding, like they are seriously pushing the ball off of it, even off makes. Like the amount of buckets they're getting in transition off makes lately is crazy. Like they are using the pace to their advantage. And oftentimes when we get into these later game settings, the Raptors deviate into a much more half-court oriented offense that just hasn't been consistent enough in these stages of the season right now. So it is a little bit alarming, like when they get in these sets. I think like sometimes they'll get into these late stage scenarios of the games and they'll be up and they're just basically trying to pray the clock runs out on the game. But they need to continue to be successful. They need to continue to put up points. Sometimes that means maybe still playing fast. You know, up to a certain extent, I'd say I'd rather get a good shot early than a bad shot late, where the Raptors sometimes have been more in favor of that bad shot just to milk a little bit more of the clock. But along with, you know, the half-court offense maybe not being fantastic, like they've had a ton of reliance in half-court all season, and sometimes to a lot of success, they've had to rely in the half-court a ton on Brandon Ingram. Like they've really just lent on him in some games. Basically, it's like I keep saying during the watch longs, you have to give the ball to Brandon Ingram and play. But along with where that has been a bit of an issue playing in half court, they've also struggled when they've had to match the physicality of another team, and they struggle when they get into a shootout against another team. This one wasn't necessarily a shootout, but let's take the Utah Jazz game for an example. They very much struggled with the physicality and the size of the Jazz in this game here. The Utah Jazz, in the end, in the 7-point loss, out-rebound the Raptors by 14. That's a little bit of a concern. And points in the paint, they're plus 12 there. So minus 12 for points in the paint, minus 14 for rebounds for the Raptors in this one, which made it a lot harder of a task here. They made very heavy work of the game as a result, just no body to compete with Jusuf Nurkic, and oftentimes very little resistance towards guys like Lauri Markkanen and Isaiah Collier getting to the rim. But we also saw these sorts of similar traits in the loss to the Orlando Magic, where the game got very physical and against the New York Knicks. But on top of where the physicality has been a problem, when the Raptors play some of these better teams like the Knicks or the Magic, if those teams start to pull away from an offensive standpoint and kind of make it into a bit of a shootout, the Raptors just can't really hang there. Like the game against the Magic, this is a bad three-point shooting team. They got hot from three. We could not go with them. The Raptors go 7 of 28 from three against the Magic. They just don't have the shooters that can compete there. So when when the other team's making a ton of shots and you're not getting as much transition looks, it makes your offense a whole lot harder to operate when that's kind of your specialty, playing on offense. The Raptors led by 13 going into the fourth quarter, and they end up losing by 10. They only mustered up 21 fourth quarter points. At one point, it was 33-10, the score in that fourth quarter. Same thing can kind of be said for the game against the New York Knicks, where the Raptors shoot 27% from three, 7 of 26. The Knicks heated up in the second half and completely ran away with this game. The Raptors couldn't match their physicality. The Raptors couldn't match their scoring. And as a result, the Knicks just slowly in the second half, not slowly, very fast, the Knicks started to pull away. So where are the problems lying for the Raptors right now? Because they've won a lot of these scrappy games this season, but when the game, what's alarming here, as much as I'm happy they're 30-21, that's great. I'm very happy. Where like some of the red flags are arising for myself at the moment is that the Raptors struggle in the environments that are more closely resembling of a playoff environment, where the game is slow, where it's a lot more half-court oriented, where it gets a lot more physical. That's where some of the problems lie. So what kind of needs to change? Well, first of all, the physicality aspect of it, we still don't have the size to compete down low against certain opposition, against certain matchups. That's something that I think before the trade deadline, that is something that absolutely needs to get addressed. I continue to harp on it. I don't think we need to, make this blockbuster trade, but a solid rotation big like Goga Bitadze, I think makes a big difference to the team and helps us out a lot. And I think it would have made a very large difference in the game against the Utah Jazz. Just having that match, having the ability to go to that matchup. We're not just looking for any big, like Nick Richards. That doesn't solve things. You need physicality, you need rim protection, you need rebounding. On top of that, and this is going to be a lot harder to address before the trade deadline, but the floor spacing. Like, if you're going to rely so heavily on Brandon Ingram, and you need to rely on guys like Barnes and Barrett to chip in on the interior, you need to give them a little bit more space to operate, give them a little bit more breathing room. And when we get into shootouts, who are the guys that are going to be able to match those spells where the other team is hitting a bunch of shots? We just don't have that sort of consistency from the outside. The Raptors have been one of the bottom teams in terms of three-point shooting in the NBA this season. That's going to make it difficult for the Raptors to find that competitiveness in these tougher series. Like, the Celtics have found us out this season. They're 3-0 against us. The Knicks have found us out this season. They're 3-0 against us. Yes, we've done well against teams like the Cavs. We're 3-0 against them. Granted, they're playing much better lately. But it just leaves me with a little bit of concern for the rest of the season. I feel good about where the Raptors are at talent-wise, but just shoring up these certain areas, I think, is something that definitely should be a focus by the front office and Bobby Webster heading in towards the trade deadline. Because Bobby Webster has said, he is going to let the team finish what they started this season. Okay, sure, but you're also, like, as much as that's great that, you're allowing these guys to go finish season and continue to play together, you're doing them a disservice by allowing them to continue while not providing them the necessary tools to find the most success. We're not even close to saying that he's like setting them up for failure, but he's making the task a lot harder for them. And I feel like it's not super complicated trades to solve at least one of the areas of concern. But I think if you really do care about making a playoff push this season, you are the Raptors front office, you should look towards getting something here to help us out here in the coming days before the NBA trade deadline.